Well, good morning, time change survivors. You guys made it, I'm a little bit. I'm like an hour late myself this morning, so give me a little bit of room. I don't normally get up this early, but because of you, we all got here, and we are going to have a good day in spite of it. You guys got your coffee? You're good? Yeah, most of you. You're going to survive. We're excited. It is a little bit stressful, right? When they like to mix it up and change the time on us. There's a bill in the state of Florida to go to time change all the time, and I think that's a good idea. I just like to have 12-hour a daylight a day, right? I think if we could tell the sun what to do, we should tell him what to do. But we are starting a new series today called Pax Romana. And the Pax Romana describes a 200-year period in the history of Rome where there was relative peace, and Pax means peace, and that is the period of time with which Jesus was born, when the New Testament was written, was in the midst of this global peace that came under the thumb of the oppressive Roman government. And so for the next few weeks, we're going to be kind of hanging out in Romans chapter 12 to chapter 16, where one of the themes of the Apostle Paul's writing deals with having peace. And we are going to cover not just our peace with God, which I think is primary, right? We need to make sure that we have peace with God, but we also need to have peace from God. Right, so that peace that God gives us in the midst of the wind and the waves, when Peter's walking on water, right, and he looks around and he sees the wind and the waves, and Jesus says, "Peace, be still," and the waves ceased and the rain stopped. And I can imagine he was speaking to the storm, but I also believe that he was probably talking to Peter. And I find myself a lot like Peter. I find that I can get worked up about things, and that it is a big year. It's an election year. We are divided as a country. We fight over everything. We are worried about the coronavirus. We are worried about maybe our economy and the bubble in the stock market, if you'll call it a bubble, or we're just on a really good run, right? And so a little bit of shakiness and volatility, and all of a sudden we lose that internal peace. And although we are in a relatively a time with external peace, right? Our wars are kind of on a hiatus right now. But the struggle, it seems like it's always there. And if we don't have this to worry about, we'll have that to worry about. And there's always something that can disturb the peace. And so if you are here and you are like me, you probably have a lot of need for some focus on peace. And that's what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks, because we are people who get worried about stuff all the time. And we have people who like to pick fights, and people who they call them trolls. You know what a troll is? Troll is somebody who just kind of goes around looking for somebody to mess up, right? They just kind of going to go and pick an argument on the internet, and there's no greater place than the internet to find a good troll to fight with if you're looking for a fight. And so we're gonna look at those areas of peace and how we can be more of a peaceable people, because I think we are to be people of peace as God's kids. And so, if you would stay with me in Romans chapter 12, we're going to pick up where Zach left off in verse 9. He says, "Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love. In honor, giving preference to one another. Not lagging in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. Rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing steadfastly in prayer, distributing to the needs of the saints, given to hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. and weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind towards one another. Do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion. Repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. Here's our verse for today. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. For in so doing, you will heap coals of fire on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. You may be seated. So here Paul lines out several behaviors that are the doctrines of the Christian life or the church. And one of the hallmarks of the Christian faith is this peace that passes all understanding. We have peace with God, but we are to seek peace with each other. And he begins to outline a standard of peace for us to aim for. This is what our goal should be. And our goal for the standard of peace is that if it is possible, as much as lies or depends on you, live peaceably with all men. I find it interesting that there's this phrase, if it is possible. And that phrase, if it is possible, kind of implies a few realities that that what we're dealing with here is a little bit abstract. It's not a concrete thing that we can always be in control of. And isn't that how peace works? We're not always in control of it. There's some things that are outside of our control. And the first thing is that we are to try to de-escalate people who are angry. Right? So if it is possible, one of the things that we can do is saying, you know what, it is possible. And when it is possible, I need to take somebody and try to de-escalate them. And you've been there, right? I remember thinking about this verse one time when I cut somebody off in traffic as a college student. I was coming back from the beach, back to my dormitory, and I'm driving down Highway 60, and I cut somebody off in traffic. And man, they let me have it. They were screaming and yelling, and I took full responsibility. You know why? Because I was fully guilty. Right? And immediately all their anger went away, and it just made me think, a soft answer turns away wrath. If at all possible, one of the implications of that is that there are going to be people who are angry with us, and we need to try to de-escalate that. We need to try to throw some water on the fire, if you will. The second implication is that we're not to instigate conflict, right? We're not to be the guy who goes around poking. We're not going to, the social media is a real problem with this, right? And an alligator got on my social media the other day, and if an alligator had social media, you know which one he would pick? Instagram, because he's an Insta-gator. No? See, that was a trial balloon to see if I want to tell it in the second service. But you got those people, right? And they're looking for an opportunity to get into an argument or get into a conflict. And so they'll find somebody who holds a different position, and they'll go and they'll get on their social media, and they will try to instigate a conflict. And so we are, as believers, we are supposed to be people of peace. Our role is not to be an agitator or an instigator. You know how you find one of those? You hire an investigator. No? Just move on. All right. All right. David said, depart from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. Jesus said, if someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the left also. The reality is that the third implication is that sometimes you can do everything you can do, and you can only do what you can do. There are going to be people who are going to choose to be your enemy, regardless of every effort that you can seek out and everything that you can do. But as much as depends on you, believer, as much as you are in control of your side of things, we are to live peaceably with all men. As much as... Sometimes we like to say we didn't have any part in it, right? So we're dragged to court by somebody, and the judge is there, and we're like, I am 100%, I had nothing to do with this conflict. I had nothing to do with this. And we go before a divorce, and we're dealing with our friends, and we're like, yeah, it's 100% my ex's fault. We like to claim that we had nothing to do with it, but as much as it depends on you, so there's a you part in there, right? So if it is possible, as much as depends on you, because it does depend on you sometimes, that there is an aspect where it takes two to fight. Tango's a totally different scenario, right? There takes two people to have an argument. And we're like, well, I don't have any part in this. But the reality is that often we do have a part in that. Often there is a part of it that is got at least a little bit of it on depending on us. And so there's a struggle. And don't forget who's writing this book. It's the Apostle Paul. If anybody knew what it was like to be a peace fighter or someone who's seeking against peace, it was Paul. Remember, Paul's former name was was Saul of Tarsus, right? And when Saul was Saul, what was he? He was an instigator, right? He sought out Christians to go and to find them and to drag them away, and then he was radically saved. He becomes the Apostle Paul. And he goes from village to village, town to town, city to city, spreading the gospel. And in almost every city, you know what he finds? He doesn't find peace. He finds conflict. John Phillips makes a list. I want to read you the list. On Cyprus, Paul had to contend with Elymas the sorcerer, Acts 13:8. At Antioch in Pisidia, he was driven from the city by persecutors, Acts 13:50. In Iconium, a general assault was made on him, Acts 14. In Lystra, the mob stoned him and left him for dead, Acts 14:19. At Antioch in Syria, he was opposed by legalists within the church, Acts 15:2. At Philippi, he was scourged and in prison, Acts 16:22. At Thessalonica, he was forced out of the city in Acts 17. At Berea, opposition forced him to leave, Acts 17. At Athens, he was publicly mocked, Acts 17. At Corinth, his presence led to an insurrection, Acts 18. At Ephesus, the whole city was in tumult because of him, Acts 19. And at Jerusalem, he was repeatedly the center of violence and opposition, Acts 21. This guy is now telling us to live peaceably? What a hypocrite, huh? Paul said, as much as depends on you, but it's not always going to depend on you. And sometimes when you have conflict on the outside, and you've done as, if it is possible, you've done as much as you could, you need to be at peace with the fact that you are not at peace. Jesus said this. Jesus said, think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. That there will be conflict in our lives. There are some who have asserted that even Luke had written the gospel or the book of Acts as a treaty to defend Saul when he arrived at Rome and he stood before Caesar as an insurrectionist. And they begin to list off all of the cities and all of the crimes, right? Because that's a pretty bad rap sheet that we just read. Like everywhere he went, people got angry with him. And perhaps the book of Acts was written as a defense for Paul to say, look, here's why they did it here, and here's why they did it there, and here's what happened in this situation, here's what happened in that situation. Here Luke is making a chronologically order of every city that he went in order to defend Paul, because here's Paul seeking peace and people not giving him peace. And there's a reality in our lives that sometimes that we will do as much as is possible, everything that depends on us, and we still don't have peace. But the instruction is the same. The standard of peace is, it doesn't change. If it is possible, say it with me, if it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men and women. And what this doesn't mean is be patient. This doesn't mean be patient, because sometimes we'll be like, oh, I'll get you later. Right? Sometimes we like, okay, well, I'm gonna call I'm gonna call a peace right now just so I can go back and reload. Or I'm gonna leave this so I can strategize and I can come up with some really good zingers. Sometimes we get this idea that, hey, we're just going to seek peace, but it's only strategic peace, right? It's not a lasting peace. It's just for us to kind of find a new angle at. Man, you push me one more time, right? I'll give you peace, but my peace has a limit, and you keep pushing, and I'm going to wallop you. Sometimes we get that in our mindset, but this verse gives us the standard for peace. And the standard for peace is, as God's people, if at all possible, as much as depends on us, that we live peaceably with people we like. This means that we live peaceably with all men, and that means that all of the things that may cause discord with other people, we're not allowed to do. That means that we don't do the things that would cause somebody to drag us to court for a late payment or non-payment. That means we're not the person who gossips about other people or cheats in our business. We don't take advantage of other people in a moment of weakness. And we are not those people. We are people of peace. So that means that we've got to live above all of the other dog-eat-dog world culture that we have. And living peaceably means that we do the things the right way. And so how can we do that? Let's look at how we as believers can strive for peace. Letter A, monitor their mood. The first thing that we can do strategically to be more peaceable is to keep an eye on how other people are in what kind of mood they're in. You ever figure out somebody's in a bad mood? Is that not helpful to have more peace? So we got to monitor the mood of the people around us. Look at verse 14 again. He says, "Bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse." So as we begin to monitor their mood, the first thing that we do is that we do the opposite of their mood. You have somebody coming in and they are cursing you. You know what human nature wants to do? Fight fire with fire, right? Mano a mano. A tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. Right? That's the way of the world. That's the where we are at. That's what we desire. That's what we think, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give it right back to them. But really what we've got to do is we've got to disarm them. When they have a mood for opposition, and there are people who will come into work tomorrow morning because it's time change Monday. Tomorrow is a full moon. Congratulations, you just realized that, huh? Tomorrow is the worm moon. It's going to be a full moon full of worms. And they're going to be grouchy. And they probably fought with their spouse and they come into work and they are looking for somebody to take out their frustrations on. And when they persecute you, you've got to monitor their mood and say, you know what, this person is opposing me. I need to disarm them. And you don't disarm them by cursing back. You disarm them by blessing. The word bless there is the word that we're really familiar with. It's the word eulogize. Eulogeo. It means to say something nice about them. You go to a funeral and you give a eulogy. You don't stand before a coffin and say bad things about the deceased. Right? You don't. Do you? Some of you, well, that's why we're preaching the sermons. You even if you didn't like the person, even if there was nothing redeemable about the person, you sit there and you rack your brain to somehow bless them, right? Because you are standing at the foot of their coffin. They are gone. Their family is weeping, maybe for joy, but they're weeping nonetheless. And you kind of got to come up with something nice to say. That's the word that's used to bless those who persecute you. So somebody comes in tomorrow morning, it's a full moon, it's the weekend after time change, it's Monday, and they're cranky and they're persecuting you. You got to treat them as if they were in a casket and it was your job to bless them. You've got to find something nice to say about them. Why? Because we match and we monitor their mood and we see what their mood is. And if they are in opposition, then our role is to disarm them. To take away that argumentation, that fight in them. We disarm the opposition. D.L. Moody said this in one of his sermons back in the last century. He talks about picturing Jesus after the resurrection saying to Peter, "Go find the man who thrust the spear into my side and tell him there's a quicker way to my heart. Find the man who crowned me with thorns and tell him that I should like to give him a crown of life." Isn't that awesome? That attitude is what ought to come out of us. That when we find ourselves persecuted, we find ourselves attacked, that we, rather than attacking back, that we bless back. We bless those who persecute us. And we do it sincerely, right? Because I know you guys are sarcastic. Well, have a good day. Right? You know, you can say nice things with the wrong attitude and you don't disarm them. And you're not being Christ-like. I'm really bad sarcastic. That's a big problem for me, isn't it? My daughter will tell you. They curse, we bless. The second way that we can monitor their mood is to look for opportunities for peace. Verse 15, he says, "Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep." So we discover some opportunities. We disarm them when they oppose us, and then we discover opportunity to connect with people. There are certain human experiences that everybody goes through, whether they're a believer or not. Some days they are in a mood of rejoicing, and some days they are in a mood of weeping. And we ought to match that mood. We ought to discover an opportunity to come alongside them. And man, if they are sad, we're sad with them. We're sad for them. We grieve with them. And if they're happy and they've got a victory and things are going well, we give them a high five and we celebrate with them. Not out of some kind of false pretense, but out of being a good Christian to say, you know what? I want to be at peace with you. You can have an enemy who gets knocked down, and your temptation says, kick a man while he's down, right? I never liked him anyway. Or you can pick him back up. And you want to know how to turn an enemy into a friend? Just pick him up when he's weeping, when he's down. Identify, connect with him in that low point when he's embarrassed and he's ashamed and he's sad. And he's fallen flat on his face and he's maybe done it in opposition to you. And rather than celebrating his defeat, you are defeated with him. Likewise, whenever he is victorious, you have an opponent, you have an enemy, and he really gets you, right? He gets that promotion that you wanted, that you were working for. He takes credit for your work. Gets the bonus. You can make him an enemy even more, or you can rejoice with him. Hey, that was a good one. You really nailed me on that one. I'll get you next time, but man, and you begin to build that camaraderie with your opponent so much so, and you see this in sports a lot, right? Where you have these two people and they are fighting head to head, and when one of them wins, the other one congratulates the winner, and they're like best friends. And a minute earlier, they were in conflict, and so in the Christian life, we are to say when someone's cursing me, I bless them. That ought to come to mind. When they curse me, I bless. Secondly, when they weep, I weep, and when they rejoice, I rejoice. Not out of manipulation, but out of trying to be Christ-like. It's like a game of dominoes. You know how to win a game of dominoes? When somebody puts down a 3, you know what you do? You put down a 3. When they put down a 9, you put down a 9. You match them. Whatever they're laying down, you're laying down. And so what we're doing here is we're building bridges. We're building connections with people who are far, perhaps, not just far from us, but far from God. And they're going to look at you as a Christian and say, you know what, they're no different than so-and-so. Well, you've got to be different than so-and-so. You've got to monitor their mood. Secondly, you got to mind your manners. Verse 16. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion. Be of the same mind toward one another. You know, Jesus was just as kind to the woman at the well as he was to Nicodemus, ruler of the Jews. He treated them both the same. We've got to get rid of this idea that we treat people differently based on who they are in life and what they've achieved. This social caste system that we play by. It's unwritten here. Maybe in other nations of the world it might be a written rule, but here it's kind of unwritten, that we show partiality to people who are of higher class, and really we treat people who struggle with a little disdain. And so Jesus is met by a prostitute, or at least a woman who's had 7 husbands, and the guy she's living with is not her husband, right? Or is it 5? Might be 5. 5. And he didn't look down on her. And then old Nick comes to Jesus by night. That's where Nick at Night came from. John chapter 3 and John chapter 4, Jesus' demeanor for both of them was exactly the same. He didn't talk up to Nicodemus, the ruler of the Jews. He didn't talk down to the woman at the well. When Jesus is there on the cross, we just sang his arms were wide open, right? His arms were spread open to us. He treated the thief who had cursed him with the same respect and love that he treated his mother at the foot of the cross. We ought to be of the same mind toward one another. We treat everybody with the same mind, with the same love, with the same attitude, with the same heart. We don't show partiality because people have a really good partiality detector, right? I hate favoritism, unless I'm on the receiving end. And even then, there's a twinge of guilt, right? You ever gotten a favor that you didn't deserve and then you feel kind of guilty about it because you cut in line and everybody else had to wait and you're like, well, I'll just stand here with the regular folk. It's favoritism. What it does is it divides people. And if we were to be peacemakers, people have a real keen sense of fairness, and when we show partiality, we lose an opportunity to bring peace to their life. And that makes them resentful. And so we seek peace by being impartial. Second manner we need to keep in check is pride. It says, do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion. I've joked a lot about social media, but our social media reveals a lot about our pride. I got caught up in this thing where I felt like because of my position as a pastor, I needed to be on social media so that I could give you pithy quotes and statements every day. I use the word pithy. It's pretty good, huh? And what I found is that there was a great pressure for me to be inspirational on social media. And I pretty much stopped posting things on social media. It's still there. I still check them every day, but I'm trying to break this addiction that I had with pride in my own heart to be clever, to be funny, or to be inspirational. And I see that in a lot of the posts that go throughout. Social media has pretty much turned away from a school yearbook, which was kind of designed to be the yearbook of the modern age, to let me share something with you that I found interesting or found clever. And so now we don't share our own thoughts, we share somebody else's thoughts. Because our own thoughts aren't clever enough, but every once in a while somebody has a clever thought, and so they make it into a little square with some fancy writing and a picture in it, and then they share it. And there's an extreme pressure to be the aggregator of great content, right? I want to have the most clicked likes. And I'm going to base my self-worth on my ability to get people to think highly of me based upon my ability to provide funny content or inspirational content to them. And that's pride. And so when verse 16 says that do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble, do not be wise in your own opinion, I think I fail at all of those. I use the word pithy to impress you. Were you not impressed? Right? It's just like, where do we go from that? And we can take pride in our humility even. Aren't we? We are keen people. I am so humble. You will not believe how humble I am. And the struggle is real, but when we are puffed up and we seek the high things and we want to always be on top and always be the winner, Peaceable people associate with humble. You know what? I don't always have to be with the captain. I don't always have to be with the president, with the leader. I'm going to go hang out with the lowly and the humble. I'm going to go and spend my time with the down and out and the downtrodden. And I'm not going to take pictures of them and post it on social media so people think I'm a nice person. Right? I'm not preaching to you. I'm preaching to me. The struggle of pride, it leads to discord. It leads to a lack of peace in our life. And so we strive for peace. We strive for peace by monitoring the moods of the people around us. If we find somebody who's in opposition and they're cursing on us, we eulogize them in response, right? We bless them in response. If they are weeping, we weep with them. If they're laughing, we laugh with them so we can connect with them. We mind our manners that we are not showing partiality to people, and we're not treating people differently based upon who they are and what they've accomplished and how much we can get out of them. And we, by all means, we don't take on this measure of pride, because in all of those things, when we practice those things, it works against us having peace with other people. But more than that, it works against us having peace in our own soul and in our own heart. Verse 17 says, repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. And here's our verse again. Say it with me. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all. Let's try that again. You want to have peace with me today? Say this. Get this through your thick skull. Get this through my thick skull. If it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men and women. Right? So here's the challenge for us. We've got to maintain this mentality. We've got to keep this in our minds. Verse 19 goes on to say, beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine. I will repay, says the Lord. Therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him a drink. For in so doing, you will heap coals of fire on his head. So we maintain this mentality of always seeking peace, of always looking for peace. We keep this in our mind. Now, the first thing that we do to keep that in our mind is that we choose to be odd. Because the opposite of that is a desire to get even. So rather than getting even, choose to be odd. Some of you are odd. All of us are odd. And odd is a good thing, because getting even never works. Somebody wisely said, I don't get even, I get ahead. And isn't that the dog eat dog? Isn't that the rat race? Isn't that what keeps us from peace? So the challenge for us is to say, you know what, I'm going to have this mindset that I'm going to go to my grave with a bunch of IOUs. I owe you cutting me off in traffic, and I owe you a dirty look, and I owe you a stab in the back because you betrayed me, and I owe you. We take all of those things. We don't try to catch up and get even with anybody. We say, you know what, I'm going to live my life, and I'm just going to be odd. The second thing he gives in this concept is to be positive. Repay no one evil for evil, but have regard for good things. I don't know what your blood type is, but you're B positive. I asked my mom, I was so hopeful because I knew I'm a B. And I was so hopeful, I asked my mom, I said, Mom, what's my blood type? She says, you're B negative. But we have regard for good. We are always looking for the good side of things. And so I know this is a lot of to-dos, but the bottom line is this, that we as God's people, as much as depends on us, if it is all possible, as much as depends on us, to live peaceably with all men. And so we strive for peace by monitoring the moods of the people around us. We mind our manners, and then we maintain this mentality over and over again to say, you know what, I don't have to be even. with them. I can go to my grave with some IOUs in my pocket. There's enough hurt in this world. I don't need two wrongs don't make a right. I'm not going to add to it. I'm just going to carry that to my grave. I can be odd. I can owe you some things, and I can owe them some things, and I don't have to get even with them. And as we begin to live that life and we begin to allow those things in our mind, we reach the goal. And what is the goal? The goal is peace. We want that peace to show in our lives. We want that peace to arrive in our life. We want that stability of peace. So we have we're striving for peace so that one day we will be at peace. And that stability of peace is found in verse 21. It says, "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." So we reach that stability because we've been working at it. We've been striving to it. We've been minding our manners. We've been monitoring the moods of the people around us. And we arrive at the stability that comes with peace. And one of the stabilities that comes with peace is that we're not overcome by evil. How do you get overcome by evil? You get drawn into it. You ever got pulled into something? I wasn't a good kid as a teenager. We would prank people all the time, and we would. I was mean, and we would. My friend and I. I'll call him Mike, because that was his name. Mike and I would pick somebody out in high school, and we would stare at them until they became self-conscious. That's cruelty, right? It was funny to us then. It was cruelty to them. And we would look at them, and then they would catch us looking at us at them, and we'd look away. And our goal was to get them to participate. And as soon as they participated, we got our jollies, and we were happy, and we, ha ha ha. Right? And they were overcome by evil because they participated in it. I'm not saying this to my joy, I'm saying this to my shame, but the goal was to get them to participate in that. And that's the way that trolls work. As soon as we get hooked, as soon as we get pulled in, we are overcome by evil. But if we are people that strive for peace, if we are people that when they curse, that we bless, if we are people that when they're down, we don't kick them, and when they win, we celebrate with them, and we're not opposed to them winning, and we don't try to say, well, then they cheated, or try to, tear them down because they're winning at life or whatever. We now reach a place of peace where we're no longer overcome by evil because we just don't participate. I think the hippies said it this way: what if they threw a war and nobody showed up? We don't participate in the evil that is baiting us to get involved, and we're not overcome by evil. And then on the second half of that verse, it says to overcome evil with good. Right? We're not overcome by evil, but the other stability of peace is that we overcome that evil with good. And so when evil fails, good wins. So with that, I'd like to say have a good day. And if it is possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men and women too. Let's bow our heads.